There we go. Tech is working. Hello and welcome to Impact Toolkits program. Lots of familiar names in attendees, so thank you for joining us again. And what I want to just do before we get started is tell you a little bit more about the purpose of this program. As most of you hopefully know, this is a pilot program. This was created to support Shape academics with the creation of their toolkits. So we had a kind of conversation right at the very beginning about what is a toolkit and how you go about creating it. And that's where we are. We're looking at the tools you can use to create your toolkits. That's been the theme of the session so far. The structure is 10 one-hour workshops. That first one was Robin and I explaining what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how it's been designed as a series you can dip into or work through. It's got loads of practical guidance, peer examples, plenty of inspiration. Robin's been putting more inspiration on the Impact Toolkits program platform this morning. Lots of videos and additional bits to go with this, but all the videos, if you've missed any of the workshops so far, you can watch them all back, and I'll share with you the link for that platform. And it's designed these workshops to give you some inspiration. We've looked at Canva, and most people have used Canva before, but George gave us some extra inspiration on how to use it, how to get the most out of it. We've looked at infographics. We've looked at using our phones for photography. We got really deep into like the structure of building websites last time. There was a really rich session from Ben. Everything from building your own little number one landing page using Wix or Weebly through to how you engage an agency to build a much meatier website. I mean, spoilers, the beginning is the same. You've really got to work out what you want, who it's for, got to get your images together, get yourself loving Canva. There's still the same work put together, but there's a key narrative here of making things feel achievable, making things feel less daunting, and moving you forward because you might have an early stage project, you might have an idea, you might have quite a mature project that you just want to share with more people. How could you do that? And that's what we're here to help you with. And we want you to talk to us about what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you're doing it. And this, hopefully, the session we're about to get into now will inspire you to do some of that. That's me. My name is Lucy Payne. That's my house rabbit, Arya. I think she's having lunch from the noise I can hear next door, crunching one of her strawberry chews. Um, I'm your host for these sessions. I'm not the expert. I'm the facilitator. My background, I have been working, helping people with their ventures for the last 10 years, 5 of which were Sussex Innovation Centre at the University of Sussex. I moved back here. It'll be 6 years ago now. That's gone really quickly. And I work with TechSpark, who's the Bristol, Bath, Swindon, Wiltshire tech community. I also work at the University of Bath as entrepreneur in residence. I work on a couple of projects at the University of Bristol. This one and also one in Foresight, which is looking at quantum, advanced materials, and telecoms. I'm not going to pretend I understand all of those subjects, but I get involved a lot in our ecosystem. And a key narrative of the roles I do is helping people on the journeys, whatever that means, from pre kind of startup idea community through to working with people like Accenture and BT. I'm really lucky. I'm a freelancer and I think I have one of the best jobs in the world that I get to just be nosy and help people and learn a lot about some of the amazing things we have going on in this region. So that's me. So today we have examples, academic toolkits. Can tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. Then we've got 4 more sessions. We're over halfway through now when we finish today, Robin. Where's this gone? Um, and this is a pilot, as I say. So the topics we've come up with for this pilot were based upon the feedback that we'd had, the questions we've been asked, the recurring themes that we were hearing when we were working with Shape academics. And we had a great conversation last time around websites about maybe deep diving into some of the tools, which we're going to put into some of these coming forward. So this is a conversation. So do, as some of you have done already, email me, message me. You've got my email address. My Bath email address is on the Zoom. Talk to us, tell us what you like. If we can't fit it into these sessions, we might be coming back. There's a discussion about whether that's going to be viable or not, but we'd like to hear what we've not talked about or what you'd like to know about in more detail. And it could be that I can find some resources that I just put onto the platform for you. But if you're not registered, make sure you've got these in your diary. So this session today is going to be pulling together. We've been talking about toolkits, obviously, and building them, and Robin shared a few in the first session. Then we got straight into the tools for the last 4. And in this session, we're going to look at, I mean, what does good look like? What does good enough look like? Where do you I'm not going to do Gail's job for her. I'm not going to kind of go into this, but we're very pleased to welcome Gail from the Brigstow Institute, the University of Bristol. And this is your buy. You empower academics. I like that. You're empowering creatives. Don't look so worried about that. Creatives, professionals, charities, and community members to transform their ideas into tangible outcomes and meaningful impacts to make a significant difference to the world. I mean, that already has me quite inspired, Gail. So I'm going to stop talking and hand over to you to tell us all about it.
Okay, thanks, Lucy, and thanks to both of you for inviting Brigstow to talk about this. So let me see if I can just share this.
I've had the tech fail already. You'll be fine. I've got it over and done with.
Right. Okay. So hello, everybody. Yes, my name's Gail Lambourne. I manage the Brigstow Institute at the University of Bristol. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Brigstow just to provide some context for you, and then talk about our toolkit development. We are not experts in toolkit development, but you'll hear the story about how we came about this. So just a little bit of background. We're one of 5 university research institutes at Bristol. Lucy's already said a bit about us, but our vision is to transform the way we research all aspects of what it means to be human in the 21st century. And we do this by enabling more equitable and relevant research that includes diversity and knowledge. In our guiding principles, there are 3 for everything we do. It's whether we curate activities or how we design funding opportunities. One is that there has to be some radical interdisciplinarity. So, for example, not just different social science methods, but also thinking a bit more radically, say, maths and English together. Co-production, so we're looking at different models of co-produced research for our projects and activities. And critical making, we're using materials and making exercises can be used to help critique questions or think through methods. So essentially, we act as an incubator space for new ideas and partnerships. We recognise that knowledge lies everywhere, not just within the university. So there's lots of collaboration for those who are beyond the university as well. Because the focus is on human experience, while we don't exclusively support arts, humanities and social sciences, we do expect them to be at the heart of all projects, just to make sure, for example, the ethics processes are followed correctly for working with people. We provide small-scale funding for projects and idea development and have a producer role. And when we mean producer, we mean for cohorts, not just individual projects, because there is something around the power dynamics of how you might not want to jettison yourself into certain projects. We were given approval to be an institute in 2015 and started in January 2016. Since then, we've supported and run multiple events and activities, and we've now up to around about 250 projects that we've funded. On all of those projects, there's a range of partner organisations involved. So as well as a university, there's community groups, charities, artists, interested individuals, various areas of the public sector, including museums, galleries and archives, and businesses. Within the University of Bristol, we're quite proud to say that there's been people from every single academic school except one involved in all the projects. I'm not going to name that one, but we're working hard to get them involved. So just a little bit about co-produced research now for those who are not aware. So co-produced research, I think I've said earlier, values that knowledge takes many forms and lies within different areas and people. The aim is also that by co-producing it in terms of the inception and the running of the project, you make research available to everyone involved, irrespective of where they're based. Same thing applies to the framing of the research question and the methods. It should be driven equally by the needs of the partners from beyond the university as well as those within, as should the methods and the approaches used, and critically also the outputs of the project. So we recognise that multiple expertise is necessary to undertake research in a co-produced way, and lived knowledge is just as important as academic knowledge, but it is tricky and it's nuanced and it changes for every single project. We always try to be open and respond to queries from our community. So as a team, we provide support to help partners to talk through the detail of co-produced research approaches. We don't tell people what to do. We just pose some questions for people to think about how they're involving others from beyond the university, say with lived experience. We also help people explore radical interdisciplinarity and also about the benefits of using different methods and approaches. As well as that, we try and make the research equitable, now, not just in terms of the topic, but also the processes that underpin the support of these projects. We typically get an increase in inquiries close to our application deadlines. So it's important for us to balance the time it takes to develop any resources like toolkits against responding to the queries and meetings. We're a very small team. We're 3.3 FTE. So there's me. Just a bit about me. Was originally a sound engineer. I then went back as a mature student and ended up coming to Bristol to do a PhD in freshwater ecology, and then went off for nearly 20 years at the research councils, running various programs, including interdisciplinary programs and ones that support co-produced research. So I've been at Brigstow since the beginning. We also have a director, Debbie Watson, who's a professor of child and family welfare in social sciences. We have Julia, who is our coordinator. So apart from the day-to-day running and administration, she has quite a big role in helping smooth the processes of getting people paid, setting people up to be paid. And then we have Kerry, who's our comms officer, who also had a big involvement in the aesthetics and the design of our toolkits.
Gail, what I forgot to say is that people can ask you questions in the Q&A. That as we're recording, we don't have the chat there. No one's asked a question yet, but I didn't let the audience know that that's how they can communicate with you.
Great.
So if you have a question for Gail or for Robin, because Robin's going to be doing the second half of this workshop, do put them into the Q&A, because we've closed the chat just because it keeps it easier to manage as a recorded entity. But I forgot that in my housekeeping. I'm sorry, Gail. Back to you.
No, it's fine. Are you going to prompt me if there are any questions then?
I will do, yes.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you.
Cool.
Well, that was quite timely, actually, because there was a bit of a pause in 2020, wasn't there? Because we had COVID. So for us, where we used to do running a lot of events and different activities, it was quite a change in what we did. But we thought, actually, this might be an opportunity to develop some tools and other processes that help people initiate and run co-produced projects. We'd want to do ones that develop resources that would allow all participants to own their own involvement and recognise different levels of knowledge, experience and perspectives, but also help address power imbalances, which are some of them. Well, I'll come on to this in a bit, but there are some questions that come up around running projects that are more frequent than others. We also wanted to think about the practical steps to recognise and address inequitable processes. And we hoped it might make the application process more transparent and democratic. And that's definitely an ongoing process at the moment, where we're rethinking each time how we might change it, how we might make it different. So we spent many team meetings thinking about what we needed. We knew we'd had a good look around to see what already existed, but we also recognised that there was our own team's knowledge and experience that we could draw on. There were all the frequently asked questions from the community. We'd observed projects and interactions. We dealt with some conflict resolution in some of the projects. And we also get feedback from both successful and unsuccessful applicants. With a lot of our guidance for funding schemes, we already try to provide it in plain language. We always try to be approachable, and we don't make any assumptions about knowledge and expertise. We were having a conversation just before this started, and I talked about my experience of doing open university courses and really valuing the fact that of someone who was coming back into learning again after many years, that assumption about no previous knowledge was really welcome to me. I knew it had been shaped around that. And I think it's important that some people always have something to learn, even if they might consider themselves an expert, there's always some learning. And so we've tried to bear that in mind whenever we've designed anything. So we've really tried to step back and think, if someone's got, completely new to this, would it still make sense? We had a number of team workshops, which were weekly during COVID. I'm also going to talk a bit about the resource as we go along, about what it took to do this. We mapped everything. So we mapped all of those observations. We tried to do it on Padlet. I've given a snapshot here of our Padlet. I know you can't probably see it very well, but the presentation will be shared later, and so you can zoom in a bit then. But it also helped us prioritize which ones we considered important according to upcoming competitions activities, as well as the constraints, because at that time we didn't know when we would be able to run workshops again. So that's how we normally provided support pre-competition. So we had no idea. So some of the priorities identified in there did shift according to how long then COVID went on for. So we talked about co-production, but actually we co-produced the whole ideation of the toolkits with the Brigstow team, but we then tested and refined with the broader community that included some of our recently awarded projects. And as I said before, we have this kind of process of ongoing reflection. In thinking about the toolkits, we knew they'd have to be playful to engage people. They'd have to be relevant, creative, and available for both in-person and online meetings. Bear in mind, it's still 2020 at this point. In understanding, we fund early stage research. We don't know, it's generative, you don't know what's going to happen, things shift. So we also knew in developing the toolkits that there will be no fixed or right outcome. So there was a lot of flexibility there, and they were intended to be facilitative. Where we could, they would be plain language, and they should be easily accessible and cost effective. So just a simple printer required. And also each toolkit should work for multiple and varied users. So bear in mind those, I suppose, elements of how we wanted to develop the toolkits. I'm now going to talk through two of our toolkits. They're different in terms of the aims and the playfulness, but they are designed to be used while developing an application. So at the start of a project then and throughout, and I'll talk a bit more about that. So the first one I want to talk about is engaged beings. This was to explore and communicate how members of the team engage, but critically stay fully engaged in the project. Just recognizing that communicating some of your requirements can be quite difficult in a group where you're just coming together. So we decided on 4 categories: personal motivations, types of outputs, preferred ways of working, and practical needs. And I just forgot to say, we're going through a rebrand at the moment. So if you go onto our website, the toolkits might not look exactly like that, but I noticed a typo, so I decided to use the old toolkit. So apologies for that. So if we think about personal motivations, that's the top left. These aren't all of them. There's other sheets as well, but for a charity that's involved, it might be that they want to get involved because they want to leverage further funding. An individual might want to develop a skill, for example, or advocate a cause. We then thought about outputs. Again, that's the blue cornered ones. So some people might want academic outputs, an artist might want a creative output, there may be a policy, there may be future grant applications. There's all different kind of outputs that might be relevant, and the team would have to kind of discuss and agree these. Ways of working was quite important. These are the red cornered ones. So open, frequent, and clear communication came up, but that might not be important for everybody. Being trusted and respected might mean more, as might be have an empathetic team around you. So again, we kind of thought these all were examples that had come up through different conversations and observations of project teams and with people who were wanting to apply. In terms of the practical needs, money is a big one, but there are others as well. So being paid on time, having a clear timetable, but then also perhaps also wanting to be a bit more flexible, or just wanting to make sure that all the meetings are in accessible venues. And with all our toolkits, we always have blanks because we won't have thought of everything, and there needs to be some opportunity for others to add other elements. So once what you do is you have all these cards on the table. Each team member then prioritizes one card from each category. You then assemble in a certain order, see the reverse, and then share with your team. As you can see, our team at the bottom shared their engaged beings. So each person has built their personalized engaged being, which others can see at the time without people having to state explicitly, I need to be paid, for example. But it can be kept, it can be reflected upon and repeated at other times. And this has been quite a popular toolkit. We get our teams to use it in their first cohort meeting, but we know others are using them as well. And we've received some feedback on that, which we then use to then amend. So that's one toolkit. I now want to talk about the research lexicon. And again, really, while this can be used at different stages of a research project, we think it's more critical to use this either at the inception stage or at the beginning of the project. So it's a tool to use to find shared understanding and definitions. Bear in mind, these are projects that involve multiple people from different backgrounds and settings and with different experience and skills. So this toolkit can be used to explore and communicate different definitions and etymologies of words that each brings, sorry, I missed an S there, to the project, as well as the assumptions about their meanings across disciplines and practices. And there are 4 stages. I'm just going to briefly go through these just to give you a sense. I think also just to show how we built some of the toolkits that reflect how people might think or work. There are different stages to these. Some are worked on either together or individually. So this is just a snapshot of one part of it, which is the warm-up. And this is a very quick, 5 to 10 minute exercise where people just turn something over, straight away think fork. Right, what does this word mean to you? Why does this word mean that to you? You can then share the different definitions in the team, and it helps each person recognize that even simple terms can have multiple and quite different meanings to different people. So fork, for example, depends whether you feel like you're having a moment where you have to decide what you're going to do next or whether you're waiting for dinner. And so it just means different things when you're working in that quick way that how people have these different understandings. And this is just to get people thinking through the process before they actually do the next stage, which is talking about the research. It's a similar process, except this time the cards are all laid face up on the table. So as a team and working together, they are asked to prioritize which terms are important to them as a team. These might have been words that were used in the application, but they hadn't really critiqued them in a way. So they're all asked for each term. We would normally suggest 2 to 3, possibly 4 terms in an hour. But what does this word mean to me? So each individual's asked this. Why does this word mean that to me? And what does my definition suggest about the assumptions of my discipline and practice? Then the multiple definitions are then captured. You can see an example at the bottom about what data might mean to different people and different disciplines. And so over the period of an hour, you might have 2 or 3 of these. Then there is a period of individual reflection. So each person reflects on those definitions and thinks, what did I find surprising? Had I realized these assumptions before the discussion? quite importantly, what do I need to be more mindful of when working together? And where did I find the most difference in understanding certain terms? And where was the most similarity? After that period of reflection, which is, I can't remember, it's about 10, 15 minutes, you then come to the meeting point. So this is where people can come back together, and the aim is to develop a working definition for everyone to work to. We encourage people not just to think of the lowest common denominator, but to really draw upon the richness of the team's discussion and people's own personal experience that reflects the different expertise and knowledge present. And then again, it could be repeated throughout, but we think it's quite important to do this at the beginning because there can be lots of assumptions made about some of the terminologies. So that's just an example of 2 of our toolkits. And I thought I would just show you a few projects that we funded so you can get a sense of why we felt this was important to develop toolkits. The first project was co-produced with dentists, those with lived experience and researchers, and it was around improving the access to oral health services for adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. The team wanted to understand the issues, quite difficult and sensitive issues surrounding access to dental, to oral health, to develop the research agenda around this, but also feed that back into changing dental practices through training, so both undergraduate training and CPD for dentists. They co-produced the outputs of it as well as thinking about the content. They then went back and reflected on things like the participant questionnaire, information sheet rather, to think about what might be more important to say or how you might prioritize that information differently depending on the lived experience of those engaging in the project. Another project, telling stories about learning difficulties, was co-produced with a community arts charity that both support but are also run by people with learning disabilities. They work with a speech and language therapist as well as researchers from the University of Bristol that included archival researchers. The project was around exploring questions of capacity and consent through the story of Fanny Fust, who was a wealthy heiress born in the 18th century. These days, she would have been considered to have had a severe learning disability. The project was looking at her history. She was lured to the Downs with the promise of strawberries and cream, and then kidnapped and taken to France, where she was forcibly married so that they could access her money. Her family then went to go and get her, brought her back, and then there were court cases around capacity and consent, which were captured in the archive, which made this project possible. It's led to other projects. It's led to further funding for the partner organisation. But it also created things like, there were the research outputs, but there were also guidebooks which were circulated to other charities supporting people with severe learning disabilities that charted the journey and of significant sites for people where there was history with people with learning disabilities. Sorry, that was a bit garbled, but it was a guidebook designed by and for those with learning disabilities. There are also projects we fund that explicitly develop toolkits and resources. So there's just a couple of examples here. Climate change craftivism in the classroom, working with schools as well as researchers. So looking at how the creative methods of craftivism can support interdisciplinary climate education in secondary schools across all disciplines. And as well as the research outputs, they also honed some of the craftivist activities and put those into a toolkit, which were also accompanied by a set of short videos. So they created that toolkit, although that wasn't the primary aim of the project. That's what emerged as one of the outputs. The second project here is one that's still ongoing, and it's explicitly to develop a toolkit for working with migrant participants in co-produced research projects in ways that encourage their creative writing and enhance their role in shaping knowledge. So they're using participatory arts-based methods, but even through the process already, they're supporting participants that now have become active collaborators in that project, as well as authors and co-producers. And we'll wait to see what comes out of that project, but it will be published on our website as well. In terms of, so those are the projects. So you've heard a bit about Brigstow, a bit about our toolkits, some of the projects we support. And I mentioned earlier that there's an ongoing reflection. So in terms of the next steps, we're refining some existing toolkits and developing new ones. So already on our website is exploring interests and developing questions that takes you through the different stages of that, but builds in iteration as well, because we understand that once you've sorted out one of these aspects, like developing the project proposal, you've realised actually your ideas need to be honed as well. That's on our website at the moment. We think it could be more playful. And so we're refining it, and hopefully that will be published sometime over the summer. We've also developed a new toolkit, which isn't on our website yet, called the Bridge. So this is how, rather than thinking about what disciplines or sectors you need to be involved, to think about the skills and expertise. So that what you're doing is trying to identify the person, the sort of person and the skills and the expertise they have, rather than a discipline, because we think then there may be some values that might be unearthed as well in terms of who you might need. That again should also be available hopefully over the summer. The cube of contexts, this does need quite a lot of refining. It's on our website at the moment, but I think it needs quite a lot of work. But the essence is still, we still need to find a way to think about how people understand the different contexts. So we talked about engaged beings and the priorities they might have, how people might articulate their priorities. But there's something around understanding, you know, for example, how does each person work in their day job? Is this project a nice to do, or is it fundamental to their job description? What pressures are they under? So in a university, there may be the pressure to publish to get money in. That might be entirely different in a different field, for example. So we're working on that one again. But what we're doing overall, and this is why everything's happening this summer, is developing a simple guidebook for co-produced research that might then map and chart how and when the different toolkits could be used along this research journey. In terms of the resources, we have managed to secure some additional resource needed for this development. It's, as you know, COVID was 4 years ago now, we had time then, it's become more pressured again now. We've realised that the 3.3 FTE we have in the team isn't sufficient, along with all our other priorities. So we've had to get in additional resource, but we've got some, because we've done all that work previously, we've got a really clear parameters of what we think is possible, where the areas of focus are. And as part of this, developing the guidebook, we're also going to have some focus groups to test them further. And just a final word, really, but toolkits great. We love toolkits. But simple and accessible guidance that's continually reflected upon and updated can also be effective. And I've just given an example at the bottom here of our research administration and support pages. As with a lot of universities, a lot of the information about what's needed and what financial information is needed is behind a single sign-on. But we think in order to manage expectations of everyone involved in a project that might not just be from the university, everyone needs to see that. So we've just summarised some of that information here and talked about how you set up partners for payment, for example, so that if a charity is involved, they'll know what they're going to be asked for when they're needing to be set up as a partner. And that's been quite effective. And the other thing to remember is there are other fantastic toolkits and resources around, and you can signpost to those. Our work is available through Creative Commons, and Robin's going to tell me off. It's also eLucid, I think, but I don't understand enough about licensing. But everybody's welcome to access them and use them. So I just wanted to say a final thank you. This is my engaged bee, and also to give you the the URL for our toolkits. And if you ever get a chance to look at them and use them and want to provide some feedback, that would be very welcome. So thank you.
Thank you, Gail. My favourite word is you used quite a lot was playful, having fun, making it engaging. And I know that sounds very logical, but I like that was a theme that came through, and I love you engaged being. Brilliant. And Robin, you can now tell Gail off. No, you can't. He'd never do that. Look at him. He'd never tell you off.
I need to have a chat with Robin and Lorraine again about licensing. So it's a good prompt.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't tell you off. I think they're they're a great set of resources. I think sort of fantastic. I did have a sort of question, and I just wonder well, two questions, I suppose. One, I imagine you see a lot of academics, as you sort of said, that are creating their own toolkits. And just do you have, and sorry if it's an unfair question, do you see like a common pitfall like in those early sort of stages?
I think sometimes there's an ambition to create a toolkit at the beginning for some of them. And I think when that happens, which in an early stage project is fine, I think sometimes there may be other ways to think through it, or to think about how they're involving participants in that or other people in that, to make sure that's a really useful toolkit to develop. I think also what's happened is a lot of people have then developed toolkits as a result of the project. So they've realized there's a real gap in knowledge. So another example that came up was a project looking at the ethical guidelines that might be needed for working with drug users in research, and that there's a lot of assumptions made by people about when you should or shouldn't recruit, how you should work or not, and also a charity realizing that the university researchers weren't talking to each other about it, but they were going to this charity that was a national charity based in Bristol to ask them about it. And the charity were going, why are we doing this? Surely there's another way to do this. So they work with academics and they've developed some guidelines. And actually that's now been adopted by a short form of that has been adopted by the university's ethics committee. So there are some unexpected outputs, but I would say sometimes the toolkit's a nice way to think about what you want to create, but you might find there are other ways to do it, or there are other resources that can be used. So I think that would be the same, as not to be too wedded to what the form until you've actually done the work.
That's great. I do have another question, but I'm also want to be a little bit selfish because I've got some stuff that I'd like to show as well. I guess that to sort of end, one thing that is, I guess, really key as well for the audience is anybody who is kind of looking to considering creating resources in any format. Brigstow have funding potentially to help with that. They have support. They can get in contact with you and the team.
Yeah.
And that will be that's a lovely way to sort of carry this kind of conversation on for anybody on the webinar at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Lucy, is it okay if I share some information quickly?
Over to you, Robin. Yes.
Fantastic.
And while the attendees, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I meant to ask Gail a question, please just pop it into the Q&A. And as I say, you shared your details, Gail. So if it comes to them in about an hour's time, which it does to all of us, they can get in touch.
Right. So here we go. So I want to share some more examples as well of academic toolkits. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Robin Halpenny. I'm Commercialization Manager at the University of Bristol, working primarily in arts and social sciences. For me and our team, that's really the ambition is about how do you scale impact from your work and how do you sustain as well that impact. So that's what we're, in terms of commercialization, that's what's key for us. I'd like to just share as well some videos as a sort of start point. I think a good place to go is just to our platform, and I think one of the things that Gail mentioned as well is that, you know, actually there's a lot in terms of co-production, but also working together. So this is our platform. Lucy or I will put a link into the chat as well now. But one area you can go to on this left-hand side is discussions. If you're looking for any collaborations on any projects, you can put a question here. Others can respond to it, or we can sort of follow up with you on that sort of side. For today, on our resources section, so we'll go live later on. We've got this section down here of the examples, and I'm going to show a few of them in a minute, just to touch on them, some snippets really of information. And what we have is various projects and examples of academic sort of toolkits. So what I want to do is just share a couple of, or a few videos quickly. Hopefully this all works and the sound comes through. I can't share all the videos on them, but there's some really great content in here outside of that, introductions to, you know, the research that the academics are working on, their toolkits, how they've evolved, and also advice that they might have. So please do go onto the platform and have a look at these videos, particularly the ones that resonate more with you or in an area you're working on.
So we realized that it is important to raise awareness of the Meals on Wheels service. So we got a small grant and we co-developed these two infographics with people who have lived experience of Meals on Wheels. The first infographic on the left is targeted mostly to people who are considering using Meals on Wheels, or people who are thinking of referring someone to the service. And it describes the different benefits of the service, but also here at the bottom signposts people to information. So how can they find out more about whether they can access Meals on Wheels? The infographic on the right also reports the benefits of the service as reported from my research, but in a more scientific way, if you like. So this is mostly targeted to commissioners of services or policymakers with the aim to inform discussions about the future of Meals on Wheels in England. One important thing to note is that we license these resources as a way to document potential impact of this work. So for example, through licensing, we are able to follow up with people who download our resources to see how they have used them and how the resources might have helped them in their work. So this is very important to consider when you are developing resources from your research or any type of toolkit. And because our research showed that not many people in England know about Meals on Wheels, we decided that the next step is to create an interactive map that signposts to providers of Meals on Wheels services. It started off as looking at English providers only, but we ended up expanding this work to all the 4 UK nations. So we got another grant and we did desktop research and we analyzed providers' websites, so all online information. And we put all this information we collected into a huge Excel spreadsheet, and then we imported that spreadsheet into Google Maps.
Right, I'm going to stop that one there as well. So there is, a further 4 minutes of that. Apologies, it started before I actually properly managed to introduce it. So that is Angelika Papadaki, School for Policy Studies. It's a great project. Like Angelika was saying, started with infographics and has now, sort of got interactive map. So an interactive tool there. It's developing into a website as well. So really nice to sort of see some resources getting validated and then developing sort of over time. We have another example here, which is a multi-university global initiative called the REACT toolbox, which is all around antibiotic resistance. And I'll just share a very quick clip of that. The reason this is really interesting as well is it's got a whole set of different resources kind of coming together, from explainer videos, infographics, graphics, guidance documents, and a huge way of sort of, I guess, sharing information to different audiences.
The toolbox aims to help policymakers, health professionals, students, and civil society organizations find relevant information and tools to address antibiotic resistance with a specific focus on low-resource settings. The REACT toolbox has 6 focus areas: understand, raise awareness, measure, rational use, prevent infection, and policy. Each focus area contains background information with case studies and research findings, which are highlighted in gray boxes. Key facts or initiatives in color boxes. And at the bottom of the pages, you'll find resources selected by experts working on antibiotic resistance. If you want to translate content, you can do so with the translate function at the bottom of the page. The understand focus area is...
So again, just a snippet. There's a lot more on that in terms of on the platform if you go to the resources section. Another one that I'd like to share quickly. So this one from Francis Giapapa. So that is School of Education and all around the research for practice sort of toolkit. And again, this is maybe of interest to people where you've got like a training side of things as well. So from that side, it's helped show ways that you can share that.
We started with C-Corp funding from the SRC IAA award to develop our initial ideas, and we created a set of resources, a package of activities, tools, videos, a work booklet, and tested it out to understand whether it supported educators' research or practice. And this was done during COVID in one setting in Bristol. Out of the success of that, we built another project, RC IAA project funding, which we got, and we worked with a handful of settings across Bristol, South Gloucestershire, and Berkshire over a year to understand how the toolkit as an online course would advance research or practice and create these research learning communities as a result. So the toolkit itself is an online resource. It's a course made up of 6 topics. A user can work through those topics in a linear fashion. It's built with interactive functionality. You have a number of different activities that are created in each of those units for people to engage with. There's a reflection and discussion area that allows people to work together to see other people's work that's been uploaded and to comment and to really share. So it is really kind of supporting people's reflective practice together. There are readings that are built in. There are film clips from YouTube that are focused on early years. There are group and individual activities. Everything is built to support people to develop their researchal practice and their own projects by the end of the course.
Okay, so again, if that's of interest, there's links to the site as well for that one, and you can see more of that there. Let me just sort of see. This is another project. So this is Joanna Birch Brown, Bridging Histories, and that's from School of Philosophy. Hopefully, this one does play.
Bridging Histories is really simple. It's just invites people anywhere to join in these very inclusive activities that I guess the core of our methodology really is just inviting people to share with each other on topics that are universal. So it might be that you're going to share a poem, maybe on the theme of I am from. So writing every line with I am from and using that to express who you are. It might be that you're going to share a recipe and story to go with that. Maybe one from your grandma or one from your college friend. It might be that you're going to share a street history. So sharing with people, is there a street that's special to you and why is it special? And that is part of the history of that street. It might be that you're sharing a family history. So a story from your family. You could think of it as extended family. Maybe there's a friendship story that you want to share. Maybe there's a monument that you want to talk about, or maybe there's somebody whose memory you want to honor by sharing that person's story. Or maybe you want to talk about being a change maker. So what is it that you're doing to make a positive change in your own life and in the world around you?
That's all I will share on that one. This is a really lovely video, and it's full of some great advice as well. So I do suggest, if you have time, go and watch it. It's only 9 minutes long. And it's also just such an exciting project because it started in something so simple, and the impact now is very much international, multi-continent, and it's just really exciting to see where it started to where it's going, as a simple set of resources in their toolkit that's now expanding. So I will sort of share. So we do have one for Paul Clark. There's a video that will be live this afternoon, all around Future Places toolkits. It is very much about toolkit evolving to embrace AR technology, something which started as a sort of simple consultation process now into something which is really exciting. I've had confirmation Paul's going to come and talk a little bit about Interactive Tool and their journey next week. So I'm not going to share this now, but if it's something you want to sort of see more of, we have about 10 or 15 minutes of Paul talking loaded, plus this video really showcasing what the technology is. And it's I think it's a really good example for just something that might inspire, and obviously taking a bit about what Gail sort of said before, about making sure it's right to do it. If this is right to do it, then I'm just seeing the sort of funny videos on the side, so ignore those. Yeah, so anyway, that's there from that side of things. There is also, and again, I'll just post this link into the chat if I can. If we've got those, let's see if I can do that. Everyone. So this one, so again, another training example to have a look at. And this one I just wanted to put by because it is really sort of simple in terms of how you can start in terms of getting your training out there as a sort of resource. And there again is the link in the chat for the Impact Toolkit program. If you don't have it, you can sort of sign up, and it's on the Aspect platform, and you can sort of navigate in around that. And the final thing as well that we posted on the site and will be live this afternoon is just links to lots of different examples. So we did research promotional materials. We've got examples of those. These are basically links to different things that we've been talking about. So again, you can go onto that same part of the site on the platform and get access to those.
We have a question about licensing. Thank you, Britta. I wonder if you tell us a bit more about licensing approach that was mentioned. Am I correct in thinking that licenses are mostly free with the aim to get impact data, or are some of the toolkits generating income?
I think so. The start point, maybe I'll stop sharing on Yeah, I guess, I mean, thanks for the question, Britta. I think we probably do a whole session on licensing. I think from my standpoint with licenses, we take a very pragmatic approach. How do we get material out there and being able to be used as widely as possible? It's not about trying to generate revenue for the university. One of the considerations with any license is just creating a license, but who's going to use it and how do we manage to sort of sustain it? So we'll take a view essentially each time whether or not there needs to be any sort of license fee. Most of what we do has no license fee attached to it, so if that gives you a sort of sense, I would say 90% plus is about getting the material out there. So things like Creative Commons or free to use licenses are things that are sort of go-to. Licenses are important though, because ultimately if you put your resources out there without a license, there's no guarantee that anyone will use it the way that you intended. They could also come back to you and say that they got results that they thought that you were suggesting and they got different results and can, conceivably blame you for that. I'll finish on one last thing, which is a bit of an ask, and that is around if anybody on this call is creating resources and you want to share those resources and a toolkit, please think about creating a simple video and we can put it up. I've got a bit of guidance, but out of time on that, but very simple, who you are, what your research is, what you found from your research, therefore what have you created? What does it look like at the start? What does it look like now? What format is it in? And where is it going? And I think you'll find all that in the videos that are put up there.
I've put a really subtle nudge on all the bits we have coming forward. And yeah, Robin, you shared the Impact Toolkit program resource, the Aspect platform, where all this good stuff is, all the good stuff. So yeah, do share the resources. And we were planning to put a little email out to everyone, so we could put that structure out, Robin, of the video, so everyone can share and get involved. But thank you, Gail. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Robin, for that whistle-stop tour. It's lots of inspiration, isn't it? And I say, if my takeaway is have fun, make it interactive, make it engaging, think differently. Yeah, that's been really good. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for everyone who's dialed in. And we'll see you next week for more.
Thank you.
Take care.